Hi, I'm Naomi Hall, and I want to welcome you to our virtual summit on stress management for educators. My whole goal with this summit is to provide you with powerful steps to reduce your stress and increase your quality time for yourself and for your family. Because I know personally, when I am overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, all of that, I can't see my way to creating that time. So that's why this is so important. And today I have with me Jenn Granneman, and she is the founder of Introvert, Dear, which is the world's largest community for introverts, which I strongly relate to. She's also the co author of Sensitive and the author of The Secret Lives of Introverts. So, as an educator and a journalist, she's been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC, and more. And since embracing her own sensitivity and introversion, she reads too many self-help books, which I can relate to as well, and lives with her son in St. Paul, Minnesota. So welcome, Jenn.
Hi, Naomi. Thanks. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I feel a deep connection to you. And when I saw your book on sensitive people, I was like, oh my goodness, I connect to this. And so can you tell us a little bit about your journey as an introvert, having worked in a very extroverted career as a teacher, to finding your strength in your personality?
Yeah, so I actually started my blog, Introvert Dear, when I was in the middle of my teaching career. I taught fourth grade for about 8 years,
Mhm.
and I started the blog just as a fun personal project, but I wanted to write about what it was like being an introvert living in an extrovert's world.
Mm,
And I would also add what it was like being a sensitive person living in a sometimes insensitive world.
mm,
So I just started this free WordPress blog on my computer in my bedroom. And at the time, I was living with this very extroverted roommate and I was dating this very extroverted man. So I wanted to write about that experience of being an introvert.
mm.
Fast forward all these years, and I think I started in 2013. So it's been a while. So I've been writing about introversion and sensitivity for quite a while. And the like you said, the blog is the largest online community for introverts. And I did eventually quit teaching to take on this writing career full time. There are so many things I miss about teaching, but also things that I appreciate not having to do anymore, as I'm sure your audience can understand that. But yeah, I think introverted and sensitive teachers have so many strengths. I think if you're a sensitive person and a teacher, you've got that empathy and that caring and concern for your students' well-being. Sensitive people are able to read other people very well, so you can read your students' cues well. You know when one of them isn't having a good day just from the way they walk in the room.
Mm,
If you're an introvert, I think you dive deep into what you're doing. So maybe you dive deep and you become an expert in your subject matter.
mm.
Or maybe you are just someone who can appreciate those quiet students in your classroom because a lot of teachers are extroverted. And sometimes those extroverted teachers don't always understand the needs of introverted students. So I think if you're an introverted teacher yourself, then you inherently understand your own introverted students' needs.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it took me a while to understand that, like, I had learned to be extroverted for my job.
Yes.
Yeah, I just had to, but
Yes.
my natural tendency is not. And I think sometimes extroversion is kind of elevated, and introversion sometimes isn't looked at as having as many strengths. But you pointed out some great strengths there, that yeah, introverts are much more in tune with people. And I think that's so important in the classroom. And we have introverts in our classrooms.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right about a lot of introverted teachers learning to sort of fake or put on extroversion, because it's a very people oriented job, and sometimes that's what it requires of us. But that can be really tiring and stressful to put on that extroversion, right, day after day. I can remember especially every start to the school year was especially exhausting. And I remember just coming home on those first few days of school and just like collapsing and sleeping all night, right? Because like I was just absolutely spent.
Yeah. So how does stress make it a little bit harder for sensitive and introverted teachers to do their job?
Right. Well, I think being a teacher is a stressful job, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, a sensitive person or a less sensitive person. It's a stressful job. It's a hard job. But I think if you're an introvert or a sensitive person, well, first of all, you experience stress more quickly. So you might hit that tipping
Mhm,
point of feeling stressed out or fatigued or burned out faster than a less sensitive person or a more extroverted person would.
mhm,
And then if you're a sensitive person, you're going to feel that stress deeply in your body. Sensitive people tend to feel their emotions, both their own emotions and other people's emotions, just in a stronger or more intense way. So that stress can hit you harder as a sensitive person.
mhm. Can you talk a little bit about feeling the stress in your body?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of ways that stress can come out in the body.
Mhm,
Headaches, muscle aches, a feeling of tightness in
mhm,
your chest, maybe an upset stomach,
mhm,
uh, insomnia, or maybe sleeping too much. So
mhm,
I like to say our body is always sending us messages.
mhm,
And if you're feeling those things in your body, it's time to take a step back and reevaluate.
mhm. It took me a long time to realize um, how my body, like, there are certain parts I understood about how my body responded to stress, like the tension, the headaches. That the piece that took me a really long time to understand was plantar fasciitis
Oh,
for me,
interesting.
right?
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
But like the pain comes out so strong in my feet.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm not surprised.
when the stress is gone, it's gone. Like, it doesn't matter what I do to try to, like, relieve the pain, but once the stress is gone, the pain's gone.
Huh. Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's different in every person, so I think, yeah, you're right, like, you gotta, like, be in tune, listen to your body, and kind of
Yeah.
look for those pain points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really easy, as a sensitive person to ignore your own feelings or ignore your
Mhm,
own intuition because
mhm,
that's what we've been told most of our lives. If we fell down and got hurt as kids, our parents might have said, "Oh, you're okay, brush it off."
mhm,
Right? Or if we found ourselves crying over something, we might have been told to toughen up. So I think a lot of us sensitive people have been conditioned to not pay attention to our bodies and our emotions.
mhm,
And especially when you're a teacher, right? I just remember so many things, so many people's needs, so many demands, so many things to do coming at you throughout the day. It's really easy to be disconnected from your body as a teacher because there are just so many people who need you and so many things going on
mhm.
that I think it's hard to even just have time to take a moment to pause and check in with yourself.
Yeah, that's so true, and you're feeling the feelings of all these other people too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, all human beings are wired to absorb emotions from other people to some extent,
Mhm,
but sensitive people do that more. We absorb those emotions more easily. So,
mhm,
you see that student who's struggling and you might feel their stress in your own body as your own stress, or maybe you see a student who's sad or physically uncomfortable. And so, you almost feel that in your own body as your own emotion.
yeah. Yep, and that has a strong effect. What can teachers do who are introverted, who are a little more sensitive, to start thriving in this high stress world where they're living and working?
Right. So I like to talk to everyone, but I think it's especially pertinent to teachers about something I call the bucket analogy. So all of us, imagine, are carrying around this invisible bucket.
Mhm,
And some of us have a bigger bucket and others have a smaller bucket. That's us. That's the sensitive people and the introverts. We have that smaller bucket. And we don't get to choose the size of our bucket. It's something we're born with. Our nervous systems all have a different capacity. And that's just who we are. So every sound, every experience, every emotion fills that bucket up a little bit more. And if that bucket is overflowing, you're going to feel stressed. You're going to feel overwhelmed and overstimulated. You might even feel panicky or angry or out of control. And then, of course, kind of on the opposite end, if your bucket enough, you might feel bored or restless, right? Usually, us introverted and sensitive people aren't on that understimulated end. Usually, we're on that overstimulated end. But as sensitive people, it's important to remember that we can only take so much stimulation in this imaginary bucket, and that's okay. So I think once we realize that we just need to do things a little bit differently, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, that can help us start to thrive. So, one of those things is I like to tell introverted and sensitive people to just start paying attention to your mind and body. Just
Mhm.
listen to those cues. Our body and our emotions are sending us messages all of the time. And usually it's things that we're not even consciously aware of, or sometimes it's not. Um, I think it's hard as a teacher to have that time to listen to your body because, like we said, there are so many other bodies that need our attention all day long. So, one thing I would encourage teachers to do is to just take a moment to pause. I mean, it could literally be 30 seconds or a minute in the bathroom or during passing time or whenever you get a break to just check in, see if there's any tension in your body, see if there's any pain in your body. Ask yourself what physical sensations you're feeling in your body. Ask yourself what emotions you're feeling. Try to put a name to it. Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling embarrassed? Or whatever that emotion might be. And I think then if we can start to recognize the messages our body is sending us and sort of catch that stress because before it becomes too big and too overblown, then we can sort of dial it back to a more manageable level because maybe that's when you do some self-care. Maybe that's when you take a quick break. Or whatever you do, whatever makes you feel good. And if we can sort of get that dial of stress to stay in the 1 or the 2 or the 3 zone instead of, piling the stress piling up in that stress flipping over to a 7 or 8 or a 9 or a 10. Um, it's a lot easier to manage it when it's at those lower levels.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I was very good at taking that kind of inventory and checking in on myself. 'Cause as you said, like you're like there's so much coming at you, but it doesn't
Mhm.
take long. I checked in when it was overflowing.
Yes,
I
me
was
too.
like
Me too. Mhm.
sobbing in the bathroom, trying to pull
Yes.
myself back together to go to class and like teach.
Yes. Me too. I lived in that I was in the same boat for a long time.
Yeah, that's such a hard place to be.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, because, I think it's maybe something happens at the beginning of the day and your stress is at like a 2 or a 3. But then more things happen, right? Things just keep coming at you. And then maybe it's the afternoon and maybe that student who always does that thing that gets under your skin, maybe they do that thing, right? And then your stress has piled up so much throughout the day and you haven't taken a moment to check in with yourself and do some self-care. Well, your stress is going to skyrocket then. And you might have a reaction that you don't feel good about later on. But it's that stress when it's piling up, I think that can make us, do things that we regret later.
Mhm.
And then of course it's just hard. It's hard to chronically live in that high stress.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like, you feel even worse because you reacted in a way that you don't like.
Exactly.
It just
Exactly.
spirals. So, what are your, like, top 2 or 3 tips for stress for our sensitive introverted teachers? What are some steps they can take? I love the, like, taking kind of a time to notice. That's fantastic. What else can they do?
Yeah. So that would be my first tip to just check in with your body, pause throughout the day, feel your body's feelings, feel your emotions. And of course, this takes a measure of mindfulness to be able to do this. It's honestly something I'm still learning to do. I'm not perfect at it. But, I think there are things you can do outside the classroom to improve that mindfulness. Maybe you journal, maybe you do some, meditation or just some sitting. Sometimes I just literally like to just sit and just be still and think about, well, what am I feeling? And to sort of think through what's going on for myself internally. So check in with yourself, pause, try to prevent that stress and overstimulation before it starts or before it becomes too big, right? Or too
Mm.
intense. Try to keep the dial on the lower end of things if possible. I know it's not always possible, right? Sometimes things just skyrocket us and there's nothing we can do about that. I would also say to be aware of the signs of burnout. Since
Mm.
we're talking about emotions, I think it's really easy to ignore those emotions related to burnout. So if you're feeling burnout, maybe you're feeling anxious, maybe you're feeling depressed, maybe you are feeling some apathy, right? Like you just sort of hit that compassion fatigue, right? You give so much, you do so much, and the body and mind can only give so much. So maybe you hit that point of apathy. Maybe you're feeling angry or taken advantage of. I think it's important to pay attention to those signs of burnout again, so that you can do something or adjust something before they become too big. So, maybe adjusting something looks like just looking at your classroom environment. Maybe there's something you can do to the physical environment to make it a little less stimulating for you as an introvert or a sensitive person. I can remember these two co-teachers back at one of the schools I was at. I walked into their room and they just had like the lights turned off and they
Mhm.
had like a little table lamp on and they
Mhm.
had some like really peaceful music playing and they sat in this like very dark, calming room
Mhm.
during one of their prep periods. And I thought it was so neat that it wasn't just like one of them who decided to do this, but they both shared a room and they were both able to agree, like, yes, this being in this state helps us.
Mhm.
So just see if there are changes you can make to your physical environment. See if there are changes you can make to the lesson you're teaching or the activity that you're doing. It's okay to dial things back
Mhm.
if that is what's going to help your stress and help you feel less overstimulated at the end of the day. And then, take breaks, right? That's probably the most cliched advice out there, but like we just don't do it, right? We just don't do it. We just push ourselves because there's always one more thing to do, right?
Yeah.
One more thing to do, one more need to fulfill. And I think as sensitive people, our empathy pushes us to want to do all the things and help all the people and show up the best that we can for everyone and every student. Um, and then we neglect ourselves. We end up not taking those breaks that we need.
Yeah, those are great, like little things. And I just, as you were describing that classroom, I was like, oh, I could do that.
I know, right? Yeah, I was like, "Ooh, I gotta I gotta
Yeah.
this is good. This is really good."
Yep. And I like, as you're talking about stimulation, I was like, I can. So I was a high school teacher. High school classrooms tend to be much more sterile
Mhm.
in how they're arranged. But then as an administrator, I worked in elementary, and there were some elementary classrooms that I walked into, and I was like, I can't, like, I don't know where to look. I don't know where to sit.
Right,
Like,
right.
I, as an adult, was overwhelmed walking in. And I always just
Yes.
thought, what about our kiddos who have like sensory processing issues
Mhm.
in a classroom like that? And not to like say that elementary classrooms need to be totally, sterile and nothing in there.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah, yeah.
but
No,
it,
I people would make fun of me because my classroom, they said, was very, like, minimalistic,
Mhm.
but also orderly, right? And I was just like, I just feel better when things are visually more
Yeah.
simplistic, right? Because just all the visual information can be another source of overstimulation.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I definitely can see that. And then I've seen other classrooms like you described where teachers have like dimmed the lights. And I've seen
Mhm.
them do it with their kiddos too, of just like, all right, we need to take things down a level and just,
Right, right.
dim the
Yeah,
lights,
yeah,
soft music.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, if you're an introvert or a sensitive person and you're feeling overwhelmed as a teacher, well, about 50% of the kids in your classroom will also be introverts, and about 30% will be sensitive people. They could also be introverted and sensitive at the same time.
Mhm.
But my point is, if you're feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, probably a good number of your students are too.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I understand that you have a free gift for our audience. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I have a checklist of 9 things you can do to calm overstimulation. It's 9 practical steps.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll have a link to that for our audience in um, the show notes in the email where they can access that. And I think that I personally love checklists. So that'll
Don't
be
all teachers love checklists? I think it's a
yes.
teacher thing.
I
Mhm.
think so, yeah. And then I just have three quick questions that I just love to wrap up with that are just kind of on the fun side of what are you watching, what are you reading, and what are you listening to?
Mm. Well, this isn't very, like, in line with, teaching or even, like,
Oh, it doesn't have to.
mental health, right? Right? But I just watched the series finale of Succession last night, which
Okay.
is a very intense and cruel show, but for some reason, I just loved it. I think it was the good writing in it, and oh, I just started reading I just finished reading the book Attached, right, about attachment styles because I've been on, like, a relationship kick lately in my reading,
Yeah.
and I am listening to, it's a podcast called Jillian on Love by Jillian Turecki.
Okay.
It's about healthy relationships and dating, because again, I've been on a relationship kick lately.
Okay. That sounds good. I see. I learn all kinds of new things when I ask this question. I get new podcasts to try out. So
Right, right.
yeah, that's fun. I love that. And I love that you're watching something totally different and out of the box.
Sometimes you just gotta go, like, totally left field, right? Like, especially in your, like, your relaxation time, like, just something totally different.
Yeah, yeah, and I find myself I swing through different genres in what I watch.
Right.
You know,
I think it's
for
healthy.
yeah, I'm like for a while I'll be like, I need the action, and then other times I'll be like, nope, I just need some like calm, wonderful, happy stories.
Right, right. Yes, me too. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today and thank our audience as well for watching. I hope you took away some great practical steps to use in your classroom. And if you're not an introvert, some ideas for your introverted friends, students, sensitive students of a little bit of what they're experiencing and how you can support them and help them as well. And we have several other interviews with experts in fields related to stress management and education. And so if you haven't caught those, please check them out. They're just as practical and interesting as this one. And you'll get some great tips that you can apply right away, just like we got today. So, Jenn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, thank you. Have a great day, everybody.